And welcome back to Grandma's Corner in a Wealthy Place, where we will receive a wealth of information and wisdom from Grandma Wells. So come sit and stay a while. How are you, Grandma Wells, this beautiful Memorial Day weekend?
I'm just fine.
Wonderful. Well, we're going to pick up where we left off. You were sharing some great information with us regarding your humble beginnings. Well, we're going to pick up back from your school days because so many individuals are graduating this weekend. And we want to give a great big shout out to all the 2020 graduates. And we'll let you give them a few words of wisdom a little bit later and encouragement. But we're going to pick back from your school days. So tell us a little bit more about your school days, Grandma Wells.
Well, I started the school when I was 5 years old. Usually you had to be six, but because I lived close to school and my aunt Elsie Shelton was one the teacher, they said let me come on, and I was in the first grade, but at the midterm I was promoted to the second term because I had already been partly homeschooled.
Oh, so who homeschooled you?
My mama.
Oh, wonderful. What did Grandma Rich teach you?
She teach me how to spell my name. She taught me my numbers and my alphabets, and we really learned to read some of the little short books that were always around.
Wow, this was at 5 years old.
Mm.
So who went to school with you, Grandma Wells?
After my brother Buster was already in school, and because my sisters were a year and a half younger than each one were a year and a half under behind us, they started the school when they turned five too. So we'd go to school for and then come home for lunch. And in the wintertime, Mama would pack our lunch. We would uh, have biscuits with uh, homemade pear jam, a fatback, and other children. We didn't know what it was to have light bread like the other children had bologna sandwiches.
But you had homemade biscuits made by Grandma Rich. So they look, you had the better end of the deal. Okay, you had the better lunch, Grandma. So tell us a little bit more about the teachers and meetings, and tell us a little bit about your PTA meetings.
Well, at the PTA meetings, they had a special program, and my sisters and I would entertain probably each time. We had two songs that we sang, Don't Fence Me In, and
And what about your favorite song that you would always sing? You are my sunshine.
yes, we learned to sing You Are My Sunshine. And the people, we always got a standing ovation off.
I can believe it. As a matter, I can even just picture the three of you singing to each other. You are my sunshine. Well, that's awesome, Grandma Wells. But I know that also during your childhood, you also had some traumatic things that happened. You mentioned in the last episode about a fire.
Yes, after my grandfather died, I don't remember him too well, but he had a special room that he sat. And one day, my brother Buster was smoking Grandpa's corncob uh, pipe, and the place caught fire. So we didn't have fire engines and whatnot then. So the place uh, burned, and the barn where it was the day after Thanksgiving, and my aunt had brought doll babies that we didn't know for our Christmas present, and they were in the barn, and we found out the doll babies got burned up, and that was
Oh,
heartbreaking.
not the doll babies.
But we had to go and live with my uncle and aunt and their four children. We lived with them, I think, maybe a couple of years. They were just less than a mile away. and that was an interesting experience. And then we moved across the road to an empty house and stayed there where my brother Johnny was born. And after a little while, we were able to build a four-room house on the home place, and that we moved back home. And by then it was five of us in school because Tommy had become was able to go for a half a day, and we'd bring him back home at lunchtime.
Well, that's awesome. That's very, very interesting, Grandma Wells. But why are you laughing about we're bringing Uncle Tommy home a half a day?
You know, because he knows wrong those paths for the past.
No. We might have to take a brief station break. But okay, Grandma. Well, thank you for sharing that fond memory. Well, that's okay because Uncle Tommy, he grew up to be not just Uncle Tommy, but Attorney Tommy, which we'll talk about that in a little bit. So also share with us, we also were talking about in the last episode as far as Grandpa. I didn't get to know Grandpa, but tell us a little bit more about your father.
Yeah. Well, I had failed to mention that in coming back, having the house bill, we had to, I didn't give the incident where we had to borrow money from Daddy's sister who worked in New York. We looked for, she worked for the rich family in New York, and she sent us clothes, homemade dresses. We'd get dresses at Easter in the spring and in the at Christmas time. But Daddy.
Well, what sister was this? Let me ask you. What
Aunt Vera, that was the oldest sister. Daddy was one of 15 children, 13 girls and 2 boys.
Wow.
And they, Aunt Evelyn and Aunt Vera sewed. And then we had hand-me-downs from my cousins that we had stayed with during fire and from other people. Because we lived in a new house from like 36 to 41, I think. And that's when we had a tragedy. My father was known as the town drunkard, and he
okay.
and a young man would go to Warsaw and go to the ABC store, which was the liquor store, and get that drink. But this Saturday night they were coming home, and they had not been drinking, and this man, white fella that was had a drunk and stolen car, hit my father, but 2 miles from home, and he was killed, and that was one of the saddest
oh my
days
goodness.
of my life. So we were able to. They brought the body to the house. It stayed back in the day. The body stayed in the house until burial, and we.
In what house?
In the house where we lived, in the living room.
Okay.
And after the burial, then he was buried at his home church, which was in 2 counties away, in King and Queen County, where my grandmother lived, and some of the other family. But he was a hard worker during the week because he worked on a highway, building highways. I remember that. And he would go to church with us sometime, but they said he had a wonderful voice. I don't remember. He didn't sing on the choir or anything. But after Daddy died, it was a terrible thing for my mother because she had 6 children. But she was determined to keep all 6 of us together because earlier years her younger sister had died that had 7 children, and those
And what was that sister's name?
on Gwen, she died in childbirth, and then the father had the children living with different people for years until they were teenagers before they got together again. So Mama said she was going to keep her children together, and she worked hard, and we were able to stay together. But I got my first job when the war started in 1941. That was like 6 weeks after my father was killed at Pearl Harbor. And we didn't know about Pearl Harbor until the next day because we didn't have radio or telephone. And my Uncle Sam, who married to Aunt Elsie, came and told us that the war had started, and that was a traumatic experience. We didn't know whether my daddy would have been called up, but he was killed before that, and I mentioned more about that later. But in the meantime, there was a white family that lived across the road from the church, and the mother had 2 young children, and her husband was called into the Navy, and she didn't want to live by she wanted company. So I stayed with her 4 years. At night, I'd go across the field past the graveyard to her house and stayed with her. And she paid me $5 a week. And she got up every morning and fixed me breakfast. And that was one way for me to earn some money to help my mother and to help myself.
How old were you at that time, Grandma Wells?
I must have been 8 or 9.
Wow, so you had your first job at the real 8 or 9 years old.
Mhm.
Okay, then did you have another job also, Grandma Wells?
Yeah, later on, after I started high school, I worked on Saturdays for my French teacher. She was married to an undertaker, and I would go and scrub the kitchen and the bathroom, and I got paid $5 a week for that. And that money helped me to have a little spending change. I allowed myself a quarter a day by the time I got to high school to buy a candy bar. And I worked those 4 years and helped my mama with some expenses.
Wow, Grandma Wells, that is so fascinating. Now let me go back to Grandpa. Did they ever find the person who hit Grandpa?
Yeah, they found this person, and it was interesting that years later, after Tommy finished high school and went to college and was in service, he was discharged and went to Howard University and studied law. And he practiced in Northern Virginia for a while. And then he went back to Warsaw to practice. And he was the first black lawyer in the area. And believe it or not, this same fellow who was much older, Tommy represented him for a similar incident, a hit and run drunken driver incident. And I just felt that Tommy took up law as uh, in relation to what we had been through, because when Mama got a lawyer for our case, she had to go to Roanoke. There was a famous black lawyer, Oliver Hill, in Roanoke, and he was able to get $1,000 for Mama, and Mama owed $500 to Daddy's sister to help us build a house. So it was a big
Wow.
difference.
That is very, very interesting, and some history that I didn't realize and that I didn't know about as far as Grandpop and even Uncle Tommy. And I really believe that in my heart that that was also a motivating factor. And of course, he turned out to be a great man and a great attorney that helped many other individuals in the Warsaw area with their legal situations. So that is so phenomenal. Well, Grandma Wells, we're going to bring this episode to a close because we know that there's so much more wisdom and knowledge and understanding. But before we close out, because we talked about school days and because so many graduates are graduating this week and this month, and even your your great granddaughter, Tiana Wells, we're so very proud of her that she graduated from the University of Maryland, College Park, your first grandchild to, and as well as great grandchild to graduate from a college. We're excited. So, do you have just some words of encouragement or words of wisdom to share with the graduates?
Well, I'm very proud of my great granddaughter's accomplishments because certainly she worked hard. But I would encourage the young people to study hard, to be diligent, and realize that the sky is the limit. That you owe it to yourself to be the best person possible, and don't let anybody tell you you can't be a great achiever.
Those are great words of wisdom, Grandma Wells. And we thank you so much for sharing. And we look forward to picking up with you on the next episode of Grandma's Corner and a Wealthy Place. You enjoy the rest of your Memorial Day weekend. We'll see you soon.
Okay, goodbye. It's been a nice afternoon.